this presentation. I have a few slides to show you of the tannery and a few basic explanation of how bookbinding leathers are made, specifically for bookbinders. They really don't do a lot of work in other fields. Mr. Barlee will explain to you a little later some of the side products that they produce, but their main production is specifically fine bookbinding leathers. Before we get started, just as a matter of curiosity for myself, I'd like to know how many people are here from the Oregon Bookworkers Guild. I'd like to thank Patty Grass. She helped coordinate a lot of this and especially saw to it that a lot of the local binders were invited to this work. As some of you may know, there is a seminar going on today and tomorrow through the Guild of Bookworkers. It is their annual standards seminar, and they're meeting here for 2 days and giving a variety of workshops and whatnot. So about half of these people here, I think, are from the standards seminar. Quite a number are from the Oregon Bookworkers Guild, and the rest are Department of Interest and Binders Consulting. In any case, I'm going to wind my way through these chairs and get to the slide projector because I'm the official secretary tonight. And I will let Mr. Barlee start.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You'll notice there was no admission charge at the door because the slides are very amateurish. We took them ourselves. J. Hewits and Sons, been in business as tanners for nearly 200 years, and as far as we can find out, most of the history's gone. They've been associated with bookbinding most of the time, probably because Edinburgh used to be the centre of publishing. Most of the big publishing houses, Collins, Chambers, Encyclopedia Britannica, all these places started in Edinburgh, Millen, Oliver and Boyd, and probably because of that reason that we've been bookbinding so long. We also used to supply various sundry items, as far as I know, about 100 years ago. I don't know when it stopped. It started again in a small way in around about 1950, and it has grown and grown from there. We do tan mainly for bookbinding. I mean, there's not very much else we do, and because of that, we're a rather odd sort of tannery. You won't find many like us in the world. Our minimum order is one skin, which
how long?
is unusual there. So, without any further ado, let's get started on it. We used to be in the high street then, but about 20 years ago we moved out to the outskirts. This is the current factory. We're very honoured to have Royal Warren supplying the Royal family, which is very nice. Honour to have. These are some pictures of the tannery. It's a pretty old building, as you can see. The local historian tells us that this building here, you see in another photograph, longer than it looks, is an old machine shop for a paper mill going back to 1780 or something like that. And we've only been here for about 50 years. We have a river along the side of us, which is presumably used for water and drainage at one time, but we can't do that now. In the old days, we used to have a lake coming right down through here into the tannery where we had a water wheel where all our power came from. And in the early 50s, we had rather dry summers for a couple of years, and machinery just ground to a halt. There's some very old pictures of the tannery. There's the water main going down the side of the transport once down in London. And, the story is that it came to a glorious end when the driver had a heart attack and burned into Harrod's window. This is a certificate we got for exhibiting at the International Exhibition in Edinburgh in 1886. In 1986, they had a centenary of the exhibition, and there were only 3 companies left in the same form as they were at the time of the exhibition. And we were the only company left that could find the certificate. The 2 silver seals just managed to survive so long. But this is coming into the tannery now. These are piles of wet salted calf skins. The skins we get are mainly untanned, and we get them in 2 forms. What's known as wet salted, come off the animal, washed, and coated with salt, piled, just like that. Or we get them in what's known as the pickle state, where they are a certain amount of processing has been done, the hair has been taken off them, and then they're eventually treated with acid and salt until the pH is down to about 2, and they'll store in that sort of position for 12 months or more. These are wet salted pig skins from Japan. The calf skins we saw, I think, probably came to street. Have a lot of them. One of the few places you can get high quality skins. These are domestic goat skins. They've been salted, they come into the factory, we grade them, and then they're resalted. You just throw one down the pile with a shovel full of salt just to sprinkle over them, just to keep them a little bit longer. We need these sort of skins for tanning when we want to do all the work ourselves for alum torn skins and special conservation skins. We want to know exactly what should be done to them all the way through. The skins go into the tannery in either pig skins, depending on the size of the skin, different numbers. 150 there. We usually work in packs of 150 pig skins, 200 calf skins, 200 goat skins, or the small 250, sheep skins, around about 250. The processing of the skins for tanning is the major part of it all. And we start off by getting the skin back to the state it was when it came off the animal. We've got to get rid of the salt and soften it up until it's as it was when it came off the animal. Then the skin is treated with lime and sulfide to take the hair off, and it swells up the fibers. The fibers in a skin come in sort of bundles and are all wrapped around with a tissue. And when they're treated with the sulfide and lime, they swell up and the tissue bursts and it opens them up so that the hair and other chemicals get right into the fibers themselves. All this process is done in these revolving drums. They are about 8 feet wide and about 6 feet in diameter. They have shells as in the like gigantic washing machines, if you like. They go around slowly, the skin gets lifted up in the shells and then drop down in the middle. We have doors on them here. We can take the door off and put a door with slats or holes in it and drain off the liquor and change the liquor. Take an open axle, and we have hot or cold water we can put into it as well. When they're finished, they come out. This is a calf skin that has been lined. You can see it is awful difficult, and it's sort of rubbery looking, and the scum on the surface is sort of pulped off hair. At this stage, they're lifted and they're rather firm and rubbery, and the skins are then fleshed with a knife to cut off any excess meat and to thin down the neck of the skin. Most of the calf skins are wool calf skins, and they have a thick neck. And we try to get the skin level in thickness so that processing is the same on the thin bits as it is on the thick bits, so that there's no thick bits which take a long time and the other bits get over-processed.
Is that done by hand or machine?
We do the calf skins by hand. This machine, the pig skins, have a very thick tail area, and we split that off on this machine here with a band knife which goes right the way around and is continually being ground at the back. At the bottom here. The skins are fed in over the knife, through the knife, yes, it's the knife. It comes down and clamps down much further than most of the better. And the skin, that is the knife. The red rusty bit is the knife blade. When it's working, it is polished and very sharp. You don't touch it even when it's rusty with a pencil or something like that. It's so sharp. The skin gets split into two, and you can level off the thickness again so that the thin bits don't get over-processed, and you're trying to get the thick bits fully processed.
What do you do with the part that got split off?
We don't do anything with it. We throw it away. We're not mass production people, but the amount we do is not enough for anyone to go process. The cost to us in processing is more than we can bear to us people.
Do you split it to standard thickness at that stage?
Yes, well, standard thickness, yes, but it's not final thickness. It's a level thickness all over the skin, probably about 2 to 2.25. Here is a calf skin being cut down by hand. The skin is put over the sloping beam, and this knife here is made there to just slice through the skin and cut it off.
She pulling is pretty pushing.
It leans against the skin and pushes it down against the skin. If your knife sharp, which is the secret of it, the same as paring a piece of leather, the knife sharp is easy. After lining, the pH of the skin is probably between 11 and 12. It is de-lined to get rid of the line and brought down to a pH of 8 to 8.5, and then given an enzyme treatment. The enzyme treatment softens up all the soluble protein in the skin. It breaks the elastin, which causes hair roots to pull up. When you get loose pimples, you've got a little tiny little muscle for every hair root, which pulls them up, which makes a loose pimple. Takes these down so you don't get that type of thing in the skin when it's tanned and deep. Softens up, grease and everything like that. After that's done, the skins are scraped on the grain surface. The scraping away here. And any pigment in the skin, if you have a skin which is half black and half white, you've got to get all the pigment out, because when you dye the skin, you don't take that out. When you dye it, the black pigment is going to come up a darker color than the white, and you're going to get all sorts of patches over the skin. Most tanners don't bother to do this because they're putting a lot of paint on and it covers it all up. But when you're working with handling skills, you've got to get all this sort of stuff out. And you squeeze down the skin with a lot of grease, sweat glands, sweat gland pores, and it all comes out. The glands get squeezed out, the hair roots come out, the pigment all gets squeezed out.
Every
The
time,
skin is so flaccid at that stage that it can almost go through a finger ring. It's so relaxed.
What do you use for a bait?
We use, today we use synthetic enzymes, synthetic pancreatic enzymes. One of the problems with tanneries in the old days was gave them a smell was that they used to use dog dung and pigeon dung. But we now have synthetic enzymes.
every time I see this slide, I make the same comment. When I was at the tannery and watched this, the skin starts off with sort of blotches of color in it, and the whole idea is to remove the pigment. And it's like squeezing a pimple, because all the dark colors just oozed out and run onto the floor.
That process is called baiting. After they've been baited, we go forward to tanning. Today the tanning process is fairly quick. In the old days, many years ago, it used to be bark. And you put a skin in a pit, you sprinkle bark on it, another one that sprinkled bark on it, and I believe at one time they used to be sealed down in the pit for a year and a day before you could take them out. Gradually, they started leaching the tan out of the bark, and used to get thick, treacly liquid to use for tan. Today we get it spray dried, and it's like instant coffee. It has the big advantage that we can dry tan. We put the skins in after they've been scraped and squeezed after the baiting process. Although they're wet, they're not dripping very much. They're put into the drum, dry powder is put in, and this physical action, it penetrates right through the skin. Fairly quickly, a matter of a day, we then float the drum up with a lot of water into it and run them, leave them overnight in it, and next day they're given a bit of oil because the lime is taken out of most of the oil and lifted and piled. With sheepskins and some of the goat skins we get them in the pickle stage. Sheepskin, possibly noticed, there seems to be two layers of a sheepskin. Below the grain, there's a complete layer of fat cells, which we have to get out. We take this out with paraffin and drum the skin in paraffin and a little bit of detergent to get rid of all the fat. And you have to empty all these fat cells, which causes that looseness or too skinning that you sometimes see with the sheepskin. It is also the layer where it is split into two skins to make sheepskin skyver, labels and light books. The inside there, the skin goes to make the chamois, which is carried with copper. We don't
George, the paraffin that you're talking about that you use to
Kerosene is a bit like
kerosene, okay, not paraffin wax.
No, kerosene. Kerosene. And it just takes all the fat out of the skin. Sheepskins are very greasy. That's, if you get the fat out, typically no problem. The same applies to the goat skins. Goat skins can be very greasy animals, and you get a lot of grease in the goat skin, so they get the same treatment, especially when we get them in the pickle state. After they've been tanned, they are piled up, as we saw in the last picture, for probably about 48 hours to let the tan settle in, to let them feed on the oil and the tan, and the tan fix. And then they're put through this mangle. It's like it's a Hannibal Formerville household mangle. Just two very heavy rollers which squeeze out a lot of the moisture. It's purely a matter of speeding up the dry. You can crease them up a little bit that way, and this machine smooths them out so they're flat. Now, the state you dry the skin in is the state you get it finished. If you don't smooth it out before dry, like a Nigerian goat skin or a chieftain goat skin, you leave the grain in, it's dry in that way, and it will remain that way. You're great difficulty in getting it out later. What you dry into a skin is what you get. If you dry it smooth, you get a smooth skin, you leave it crinkled, and all lines and the rest will stay that way. Here, these are calf skins which are being smoothed out before drying. The skins, when they're drying, they're hung up on hooks and dried slowly. They take probably 4 or 5 days to dry, depending on the weather. If you dry them too quickly, you have capillary action, which draws some of the tan, and definitely a lot of pieces called non-tans out to the surface. Non-tans are bits of wood, bark, all sorts of stuff like that, which act as dry lubricants. They have a filling effect, and without them, you don't get nice leather. You get an empty, dead leather. You have to have that sort of thing in the leather. So we dry them slowly so it stays in the heart of the skin. Otherwise, you get an empty, hard, harsh center of the skin. These are some Nigerian goat skins or chieftain goat skins which have been dyed. They also get hung dry. You see at the main stage because it goes stretch them out and get a flat, try to get a flat skin wash. Great. Then the skins are dry. They come down to what we call the crust, the rough tan warehouse. They're sorted into grades for thickness, size, color, quality. We can have as many as 8 or 10 different grades. And we have goat skins, calf skins, skivers. This is a bale of tanned Nigerian goat skins. That's how they come in native tan. The skins are piled into the different grades. If you have 200 skins, you might get 21st of a size. They're gradually piled up in their different grades until you get a certain amount sufficient to make a patch to go through to the next stage. Of a lot of, especially goat skins, when you buy, say, 1,000 goat skins, probably only 300 or 400 are suitable for quality bookbinding. The rest are very scratched, very stained, quality tan is exactly the same way. It still have to be quality tan. In the tanning trade, there are two types of tanning materials: condensed and hydrolyzable. Condensed tan will go red very quickly. You see on the table two pieces of leather which have had a template cut out of a piece of paper and put on top of them. And they were exposed to daylight in the window for a week before I came here. The condensed tan, you'll see a very red skin in the middle of it. The hydrolyzable tan is unaffected by the light. We only use hydrolyzable tans except for pig skins, which are going for diaries, saddles, leather goods, belts, and that kind of thing. The reason is that we have to get rid of these skins. We take a certain amount out for allantoin and quality bookbinding, but the rest, the majority of them go for leather goods or non-durable articles of some sort. The reason for the achievement of the tan is that the condensed tan, the poorer quality tan, is about half the price of the quality tans. And you've got to get rid of something like that. You've got to be in a competitive market somehow. But all our other leathers, all the good skins, whether they are good, bad, or indifferent, all calf skins, all sheep skins, get tanned with hydrolyzable, high quality tan material.
Which specific tanning materials?
We use mainly morels because of its availability and reasonable stability and reliability of quality. Sumac we use occasionally, but the varieties of sumac vary tremendously. It's difficult to know where you're getting it from today. They tend to mix them all up. They're not necessarily really high quality Sicilian sumac, which is the best.
What's a marano?
It's nuts which comes from India. There are other tans we use, chestnut. That's the main one, chestnut, and marabouts, occasional sumacs. These are just piles of different grades of skins in the rough tan state, waiting for the next lot. There's some Nigerian goat skins being sorted into different grades. The marshal's up there. After when we've collected enough skins for a batch to go through the dye house, we try to work in as big a batch as possible. But if somebody wants a special thing, it doesn't really matter, we can do it. But calf skins, pig skins, we try to work in lots of 100 skins at a time minimum. The first thing we do is to level the thickness of the skin to the thickness. We work in millimeters, but this machine, you can see the blade shining above the skin here. It shaves the skin down to a level thickness all over. The skin goes right through at a set thickness, and depending on what you want, you can set the machine with what substance you like. 1.5 ounce, 1.5 ounce, 2 ounce, 2.5 ounce, whatever it is. Each skin, when it is shaved, we've got a dial here, it checks the thickness and sees if it's right. See the blade here. And that blade is kept very sharp by an emery wheel moving back and forwards right across the thing all the time, just slowly grinding it all the time. The result is you get little chips of emery and iron coming on, and they fall on the skins. And the knife blade here is only half the size of the other ones, and it doesn't put quite so much strain on it. The feed is not automatic, it's on a foot pedal control, and you don't put quite the strain on the skin. Otherwise, if you put too much strain on the skin, you can physically burst the braid.
Is that skin wider than the blade is?
Oh, much wider than that. On the small machine, yes, it's much wider.
And so you have to go through several
It
times?
has to go through many times, yes. Make sure that it gets all those overlaps, cut off properly, this sort of thing. From that state, they go through to what we call our die house, where we have the same sort of drum running, but we have different sizes of them. If you want one skin, if we put it in a drum that size, it would get lost, and the whole ratio of water and chemicals would be completely wrong. So we have various sizes. Well, the first thing we do, we must get rid of all the iron that might have come from the shading. That's done with oxalic acid, which makes a soluble salt of iron, and then the sequestering agent is put in to mask any that is left. We then strip out the tan that has been on the surface. We get a very sharp stripping an alkaline strip which removes all the surface tan, because we've been collecting skins, 20 from this lot, 30 from the next lot, 15 from another lot. There could be 6 or 8 different cannages in the parcel. So we strip out all the tan, re-tan them, so they're all freshly tanned on the surface. Because the dyes we use attach to the tan, and by doing that you get a much more level dye throughout the pack of the skins. If you didn't do that, then it tend to be dark ones grading up to lighter ones. Doing it this way, you get a much more level color throughout the pack. Right, it means more work, more expense, but at the end of the day, it makes a better product. There. The dye, we use acid dyes. By acid dyes, it means that they are fixed by acid. So we dye them after the stripping process. The skin is stripped, washed with water. They're still fairly alkaline, probably a pH of about 7 to 8. We dye them at that. The dye has no affinity to the leather. It goes right through the complete evenness of distribution of the color through the water, the skin, right through the heart of the skin. We then acidify it with formic acid, and that fixes the dye. And you get a hopefully a level color. After they're dyed, they're given some oil and left over what we call a horse trestle to feed for 24 hours. It is also in the dye house that we do the aluminum retanning for the conservation method. There we have to get rid of all oil of the skin, all the natural oil that we can, because when the aluminum hits it, it precipitates it, you get aluminum soaps
couldn't you bypass that step?
I beg pardon?
If you have, you put the oils in and then immediately take them out, can't you bypass that step?
Well, the oils are put in the tan yarn. When we're doing these, we don't put them in, it gets put in, I'm going back to the beginning again. They're cleared of iron stains. We don't give them a sequestering agent. They're stripped of tan, given the aluminum, stripped of tan and treated with detergent at the same time to get rid of the oil, given the aluminum, taken out and left to let it fix itself, and then put back in oil.
So you have to take the oil out in order to get the alum to go in.
You know, you can get the aluminum to go in all right, that's no problem, but if you don't have the oil out, you're going to get these aluminum soaps which particularly waterproof. You've got to put in an oil which not split with the aluminum. After they're dyed, they're put onto sheets of glass to dry, except for skins like clansman, chieftain goat skins, where we have a grain and we don't want to flatten it out. They're hung to dry, as we saw with coloured ones earlier on, with the other skins hanging to dry. The skins are smoothed out onto the sheets of glass with a stainless steel slicker. They just stick there with their own suction, except for pig skins, which you probably realize that the bristle hole goes right through a pig skin, so you've got massive little holes with no suction in it.
And that's right inside the glass.
Right inside the glass, so you've got a nice smooth surface. The pig skins, if we're putting them on, we put on a flour water paste on the skin before we brush it onto the skin to make them stick to the glass. Alum-told skins will not stick to the glass. They just fall off immediately. So they're straightened out on frames with the clips to keep them flat by frames. The frames go through a chamber of about 50 of these glasses, taking 4 skins apiece. It's humidity controlled, temperature controlled, and they come out the other end dry. The skins are peeled off, the glasses are washed and come out and get used again. That's just another one being smoothed out on the glass.
You have somebody working on each side of the glass,
Yes.
or the same one person?
There are 2 people working on the glass at a time. However carefully we dye the skins, we have problems like weekends, the skins are piled before they go onto the drying machine. If we have some very thicker skins, it might take a little bit longer before they get onto the drying machine because of the delay with the previous lot. All these things affect the colour. And the result is that when we come up to the finishing department after drying, the colour has to be adjusted as almost impossible to, in other words, pure luck if you get the colour 100% right the first time without us. Even if it's for an aniline casting or there's no finish put on at all, to get the colour exactly right, the skins are sprayed with a mixture of dye and water, or just to adjust the final colour. If we're not spraying dye and water on, we're putting a finish on with chieftain and clan goats. We put a mixture of casing finish with the colour in them. The terrain being so rough, tends to collect dust and dirt casing finish on. Or if you're using the lower end of the skins, you spray on an acrylic paint, pigment and acrylic emulsion, and it's all done through these spraying machines.
Is that why it's a, did I just hear it's a casing finish?
We put a casing finish on the chieftain and Tasman goat skins. It depends. You could either put a pigment casing finish on or a pigment acrylic finish on. Depends what the use is for.
The only reason I ask is, having used chieftain frequently, I've always found it very difficult to blind tool. Casing is interesting adhesive in that it is only one time soluble in water, 2 times it is not. And thus for
if you put a little bit of alkali into it, if you're damp, you put a little bit of ammonia in it to soften up everything. And ammonia being a gas will come off. And you won't have any problem with it. It will soften up easily.
well, I've always, I mean, not having known this little tidbit, it's been impossible to get a blind tool finish on it. It's that comparable to say some other skins.
Yes. Well, you do get a certain degree of heat resistance, if you like, with the casing film.
In this picture, obviously, the skin that we're looking at going into the little dining room is not the same skin that you're correcting the color on.
Series of pictures.
You don't make that drastic an adjustment.
Why?
Neither is that one.
I'm just curious, why is the casing put in? Other than, why is not just the dye by itself sufficient?
Because we're trying to get what you like, and everybody likes, a two-tone effect on the grain. You like it to be darker on the top of the hills and lighter in the valleys. And you'll see how that's done later. That is basically the reason. And as I say, to keep them a little bit cleaner. Again, most of the clansmen and chieftain, because of their nature, we hang them to dry. We can't get them flat to process. The shaving of the thickness is done at the end because the shaving machine stretches out the skin and tends to flatten. As a result, you get a lot of dust on the back, which you'll probably notice on these skins, and it does make a seal against the dust. Dust will not very easily.
When you put, if we were to use, as you're suggesting, you said ammonia in the water for doing blind tooling,
Yes?
would that tend, in the long term, have an effect on the uniformity of the color? Because isn't
Not
it?
serious, not if you don't overdo it, I don't think. I mean, it's ammonia theoretically is a gas, and I think you'll find it will come off and you won't be left with anything.
But if we're wiping with ammonia and water over along a line, we're going to pick up that casein that's in that area. And I'm kind of remembering to the effect of on a piece of vellum, we cannot put egg glare onto vellum because if we get too much on the area where we're going to be putting a gold line, in time the color changes. And so it would seem that maybe.
I think if you would just quickly wipe it over, it wouldn't soak in.
But we need to get the water into the skin so it'll take a blackening.
If you wipe it over once quickly, fairly wet, I think you'll find you won't take anything off, and it will then soak in and soften.
But it's the long-term effects.
I don't think the long term will be any long term. It should dry out
But
back to where it was.
in most cases, we have to put 2 or 3 applications of water in an area in order for the water to penetrate before we put on our hot tool to get that nice, clean, crisp black line that we're looking for. So,
Well, it might be better just using water, you know that.
well, then, but we can't get the blind line, as Frank was saying. We can't get a nice, clean, crisp blind line.
Even with 2 or 3 coats of water.
Yeah.
It's difficult. to do it sometimes. I mean, I had a large book and it was, I mean, it's virtually impossible to get a darkness that you normally associate with the blind tooling technique of where you have to dampen the leather, hot tool, dampen the leather, hot tool, dampen the leather, hot tool, repeatedly to get the real deep black and tints. In fact, in the book I'm thinking of that I did, the result was more an embossing that I got as opposed to an actual, what we would sort of, I guess, term look more like a brand sort of thing, the visual, the color difference. Is there any reason why?
I've never tried it. I honestly
What-
can't answer.
Is there any reason, I mean, other than dust, I mean, I think I could dust off the leather. Could one not get this without the casing?
Well, one of the problems is, as I say, you'll see in a minute, I'm saying this, if we can go on. We'll come back to it in a moment. When they come off the machine, they're hung to dry. We don't force dry them because we feel it's better to let it settle in itself to dry. This is softening the skins, stretching them out. It has underneath here a glass slicker, just a piece of glass, gives a polishing effect on the surface too. This is a calf skin. He's using a steel slicker, and he's just pushing it against the skin, and it softens it. It's on the inside of the skin. It's grained down. It's not doing any damage to the grain. That's how we soften the calf skin. It's more a question of just freeing the fibers, which, when they're drying on the glass, tend to come together a little bit. It's just a question of easing them apart a little bit, just to get the feel back into the leather. This is hand graining a goat skin. The skin is first of all done damp, and it is grained up and down, and you form a lot of lines across the skin. And then they're turned around and done the other way, and the lines become boxes. And then it is done on the diagonals, and going around the skin like that, you eventually get the pinhead of what is known as Morocco grain. It is dried out quickly in a hot room, and it shrinks it up and fixes it like that, and then it is regrained to soften it. Today, with today's wages, it is not a thing that is done very often. Most of it is done by embossing the grain onto it. Here we are polishing the skin, and we have a piece of glass here. We used to use agate, and we find glass will work as well. It's rather like an agate burnisher. Now this is the reason we need something on the surface, because if we did that completely natural, it would be almost impossible to do, to get the polish on the skin like that. You have to put something on the surface to take the glaze.
Why does your skin when you do that?
Completely dry, it's completely dry, yes. There's no heat. Well, the burnisher or your glazing glass, whatever you like to call it, yes, it gets hot.
But now electrically, this is just like friction that
It's just
heats it up?
pure friction. There's a leather pad underneath the skin, and this arm goes back and forwards at this speed, pounding the skin. And if you didn't have anything there to take the glaze, the skin would be snatched out of your hand and almost impossible to do. That's why we have to have something on the surface to polish it.
And you're doing this on which skins?
There's a clansman goat skin, or either a clansman goat skin or a chieftain goat skin.
So is it fair to say that you could produce a skin that didn't have casein finish on it, but you'd have to completely bypass this polishing step?
We wouldn't get the same type of polish on it at all.
What would the skin look like, man? Because that part of what I would like to see, shall I say, and maybe it's just me, is not the high polish. If I want a high polish skin, I'll burnish it myself when I'm finished. I mean, just for the sake of having a skin that would be easier to tool and so forth, without the casing and without the polish. What would the skin look like otherwise? Would it not be aesthetically pleasing, or is there some
Yes,
other?
and one of the problems is that with applying these to people like yourself and the big user, the limited editions and this sort of thing, where they're not wanting to do that. And we could supply you without, we couldn't guarantee the color quite exactly and that sort of thing, but
Would it not be cheaper for us then? Because we bypass now 2 steps. We're obviously always looking at the cost of what it's costing. If we can bypass 2 what seem to be time-consuming stages, couldn't we get a cheaper skin? Yet with the qualities that you put into it in the advance, with all the wonderful tanning and so forth, you'd be meeting our expectations as well as prices.
yes, it will cut down the quality. It's an extraordinary thing. Also, the polishing, as you possibly know when you do it, if you find a flaw in the skin, you will polish it out very often. And the flaws will show a bit more, which you normally polish out.
As far as the expense is concerned, all kidding aside, I think even if it were a little bit cheaper because it's bypassing 1 or 2 steps, my guess is that the extra handling for them to follow those skins through the process and say, okay, pull these 6 out and let's bypass and take them upstairs now, and keeping track of those few skins that are being handled in a special way, even bypassing, I think just the time and effort to do that would probably.
Unless we ask for a specific order, like 100 skins done this way.
Then I'll give it to you cheaper. You get an order for 100 skins, I'll give it to you cheaper.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the casing is there to aid the polishing.
Yes,
Why is the skin polished?
because you smooth it out.
So there
Shine
is
is a
something,
natural smoothness.
so there is something in this step, irrespective of the casing, that is done to improve the quality of the skin.
Yes,
And
you'll
the
press it
casing is
down a
added
little bit.
to aid that process.
Yes.
And
Now that we know that there's this chemical on the surface, or this coating, or however we want to call it, and from your experience, you say that we can remove it, or it might come off with ammonia and water. Maybe what we have to do, if we're looking for not only being able to blind tool an area, but in the long term for the uniformity of color, maybe we just need to wash the whole surface of the skin with ammonia and water.
Also,
I don't know.
with those sort of streaky as you do that, especially you have a problem of more of the ammonia and water building up in the deep parts of your range. Because you've actually got to lift stuff off in that case, not just soften it.
There's nothing else that could be used other than casein? A gelatin of some sort?
And that is the other thing, or albumin, that they're wanting to
And once you get into substituting with shellacs and things like that, you get this real sort of vinyl plasticky look. So you really don't want to use it all the time.
If you get something like Harmontown, beautiful as long as Oasis is beautiful as long as where's the problem?
I think what we're basically getting at is that a lot of us, not a lot, some of us, have grown up in our bookbinding training using a lot of Oasis. That no longer is available, at least certainly is not readily available. And so we've gone to other sources, yours in particular, but with that conscientious, noticeable difference in your skins being that they have the high gloss to them, they have what I have always thought was a coating of some sort in the dyeing process, because they're so immaculate in finish. Of all skins, I've never seen any as beautiful when you look at them from the Hewits leathers. But it has created a problem for us, or for some of us at least, in our work to get the quality of work that we're trying to obtain with this coating on it. Personally, I'd like to see all the steps that you've done, with the exception of these coatings and the polish on it. I mean, I can do the polishing myself. Granted, an edition binder may not have the finances or the capability to put a polish on a binding if that's what they want. But I would suspect, personally, I would think you would find a lot of people like the matte, the subtle matte finish of an unpolished, uncoated leather. The coating gives us a certain, scares us a little bit. It does us look. It looks too perfect. And in leather bindings, a certain amount of flaw and a certain amount of natural characteristic of the skin is expected.
I agree. Yeah, for my application, it's the same thing.
We'll try something or send you something.
I was just going to say, would it be possible for you to take the skin in production and stop it right before the casing process and pull one skin out
Yes.
and bypass the casing and the polishing and then put it back in and send it over here so that it can be evaluated and you can send it to you and then you can pass it around to a couple of other people and you can see exactly what it would look like if it wasn't done. Cut it up. Well, I think you should see a whole skin. I think as soon as you start cutting it down, you're going to lose some of the look. So we'll get one, and we'll send it to you first, and then you can circulate it to a couple of people. Yeah, we'll have to make a list here of who wants to see what the skin looks like.
Can you explain to us the difference between the Oasis and your skins? Perhaps that would clarify. What
I would say there was something on this, and they put less on. I don't know.
As far as I understand, having been through the Harmonton mill, actually they leave the skins at the process where you had the table there and you have that burnisher or whatever you were using. They take, I think it is like a piece of wood with a rag over this surface, and they merely burnish the skin at that stage, and that's it. There's no waxes or caseins or anything sprayed on it. They're getting the burnish and a slight shine from merely the friction of the hand tool. But with your process, you're saying you're having to put the casein on in order for this big glass burnisher to do its job to get a shiny skin.
We have a problem that we have to satisfy the edition binder as well as yourself. This is the problem. And nobody's listening, or shouldn't be listening, but they tend to subsidize